Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and we're going to be talking about SARS-CoV-2 and what's going on in the United States. This recording is on September 1st. I also released a recording yesterday. We did a recording yesterday. I released it today with John Hogue. We talked about future wars and future financial crises. It's a very interesting conversation that we had, so please watch that video. Now, again, this one is going to be dealing with SARS-CoV-2. The two main variants that we need to worry about in the United States are Stratus and Nimbus. Now, Stratus is more focused on the western and southern regions of the United States. In terms of infectivity, in relative terms, between Nimbus and Stratus, Stratus is more transmissible. Now, they're both Omicron, and it's important to kind of understand the last 2 months of endemic emergence in the United States, especially with these two variants, and the current last 5 days or 10 days. All right, so I'm gonna play a whole bunch of videos and I'll give you my perspective on this. But it's important to preface this concept that I've mentioned multiple times on videos. When you develop an antibody, either through an inoculation or through natural infectivity, that antibody will last for, the IgGs will last for 10 years, okay? Now, the thing is that two things have to kind of happen with the immune system. There has to be almost like if you're looking at it from an inoculation point of view, you'll develop what is called IgMs and IgGs. Your IgMs will be at a higher concentration in that first inoculation, and then that will start to wane down, and then there's an additional inoculation to boost up the IgGs. And when that happens, when that class switching happens, then what happens is that you have a more robust number of titers that lasts for 10 years, and you have a stronger series of memory cells, B cells and T cells, memory cells. So when you have that, then you have this window of protection for 10 years. Now, it peaks at about 5. So the titer levels and the robustness of those titer levels peak usually at about 5 years, assuming no immune issue with the patient. And then they slowly start to come down. So if you get a variant of SARS-CoV-2 and you have antibodies, titers, right, then your ability to fight it is pretty high. All right. The problem comes in is that once you hit past the 10-year mark, which in some cases will be around 2030 for some people, maybe 2031 for others, 2032. Right? So sometime in that period of time, there's going to be a group of people that do not have robust titers in their serum, but they have memory cells. So it just takes a little bit more time to activate the memory cells and boost up the actual titer level. So you have memory cells and you have titer levels for 10 years. Now, when you get older, activating those memory cells will be a little bit harder. Your titer levels may actually decline quicker. So this is the reason why boosting up your immune system is really important. All right. Now, there's ways to do it. I'm not going to go over it in this video. But all right, so you have that situation where you have the titers. Now, for individuals that just had one exposure, let's say they didn't get an inoculation, they had one exposure with SARS-CoV-2, and they did not have a class switching, a robust enough class switching, then the titer levels may not be robust, nor would their memory cells be robust. All right. Most people, though, what happens is that they are actually exposed, don't even realize it, and that's like their almost second inoculation. So you can get inoculated and you have this class switching, or you can have a natural infection and don't even realize that you have an additional hit and your body's already going through its class switching. So if someone just received just one infection and the body creates antibodies to fight it, and that person never had any other SARS-CoV-2 infection, it was just one, and they didn't contract it asymptomatically in subsequent years, their titer level most likely will be lower, and they won't have as robust of a memory cells. But in most cases, you're either have contracted it multiple times, or you have you've contracted multiple times and you know that you contracted it multiple times because you have the symptoms, or you were asymptomatic. So it's kind of a moot point, but it's a possibility. So you have a possibility of natural infection and you have class switching. You might have some people in the population that had one exposure and not as robust class switching. All right. So if that small percentage of the population that didn't have the robust class switching and robust memory cell activation, or memory cells to be populated for future infection, and lets you fast forward 10 years later, then you may have a problem. All right. You may have a problem in 2030, 2031, 2032. Okay. Okay. That's an important feature to pay attention to. Now, so most people in the population in the United States, and probably worldwide, but I'm more focused on the United States, most people in the population have the proper class switching and the memory cells and the titer levels. So when something new is popping up during the endemic phase and it's mutating, you're going to be able to fight it. But the problem is that because people have a bioshield of antibodies, either natural infection or through inoculation or both, some people have actually a problem with their immune system because of it. So that's another nuance that people have to pay attention to. In addition, as there's this bioshield, it forces the evolutionary process in a chaotic way, but there is a selection pressure for higher affinities to different receptors or different areas of a receptor. And there are multiple receptors that this spike will attach to. Now, with this razor blade throat issue that's coming up, and we'll talk about this and play some videos about it, it's because of the affinity to the throat epithelial lining, having a higher affinity compared to the early days of SARS-CoV-2. So there is this selection pressure to attach on different cells in different tissues, different areas of the body, different receptors. And when that happens, and this is what I predicted in 2020, you have the pinball effect. And what is happening is that you're going to see different pathologies. Different pathologies are going to arise over time. So you're going to have digestive issues. You're going to have memory loss. You're going to have uh, um, sore throats, problems with kidneys, problems with liver, all right, vascular issues, bone issues, blood issues. Pathologies are going to, the pathology of SARS-CoV-2 is going to change. Now, the reason why this is happening, all right, people would say, well, why isn't it that with regular viruses out there that when there's something new that comes up into the human population, why isn't it that a regular virus through zoonosis doesn't also provide different pathologies? Well, in a small way it does, but not in a grand way. And the reason why is because in normal zoonosis, you have some sort of mutation that jumps species. All right? But what happened with SARS-CoV-2 with the serial passaging in the laboratory led to multiple affinity receptors. It led to the ability to attach to receptors with different affinities. So when these affinities change, and these receptors are different in different tissues, the pathologies are going to be different. So we're not talking about one event that led to a zoonosis species jump, like in normal zoonosis type situations. We had a multitude of highly tuned attachment in the laboratory, so sped up the evolution. Now people call this directed evolution. It's just serial passage with it's serial passage with a trait selection. But the thing is that it has a lot of different affinities. And this is that pinball effect that I'm talking about. So as the affinities start to become more robust with different receptors or different tissues, you're going to have different pathologies. And so during the endemic phase of SARS-CoV-2, it literally will change on how it's affecting the body. It's not cookie cutter. It's not going to be always the same. And this is because of the fine tuning of serial passage. And a lot of people don't understand this. And this is why I think the medical community is not paying attention to the nefarious aspects to serial passage and of the gain of function research that was taking place in Barrick's lab and in Wuhan. All right, so should someone be worried? Should you like hide under the bed? No, don't hide under the bed. But you do need to prepare to be able to mitigate to prevent it from festering. And by doing that, I've been saying it multiple ways, but just follow my recommendations on different videos that I've done, and you'll be fine. All right. But the key here is to mitigate it right away. And that we're in an endemic phase, not to get scared. Don't get scared. There's no reason to get scared and to panic. But you have to pay attention that there is a 10-year window, waning window of titers. And for most people, memory cells will activate even if you have a very low titer level after the 10-year mark. And within that 10 years, and you contract SARS-CoV-2, your titers will help and your memory cells will boost up your titer level. So for most people, you're going to be okay. But there are people that have autoimmune disorders from this and a suppressed immune system. And for those people, you have a problem. All right. Now, this is where I call it the AIDS-like syndrome, where your immune system is down and you're not going to be able to fight it as well. And other fungal or bacterial infections or even parasitic infections will become more prevalent in the society. And the data is starting to show this. All right. You also have situations where people are having eczema issues or some sort of psoriasis, some sort of immune system disorder, right? High in lots of levels of inflammation and antibodies causing an attack on tissue. So that's another aspect of this. There are many issues, long COVID, there are lots of problems. Myocarditis, endocarditis, pericarditis, right? Neurological issues, early onset of dementia, vascular problems that can lead to early onset of dementia, vascular problems that can lead to early strokes or pulmonary embolisms. And so there's lots of problems with what we just went through. All right. But in terms of antibodies, for most people, you have a certain number of titers, either through natural infection or through the inoculation or both, that will help you to mitigate any endemic wave that you may experience in your community. Now, there's also problems with overboosting. And by overboosting, you're weakening the immune system. So if you keep on hearing boost, 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 or take a new version of whatever, of the messenger RNA, I highly disagree with that. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right. One, it causes the messenger RNA platform wasn't fully tested, and that it can cause problems with cells. And the actual messenger RNA stays within the cytoplasm much longer than people thought. And the vaccines don't have the filtering process to prevent plasmids, which is part of the upstream process to make the messenger RNA. They don't have a good process to filter it all out. So you get debris, manufacturing debris, within the vaccine that can lead to genomic integration. If you have a high inflammatory situation that's going on in certain tissues, and you could also accelerate the chances of this genomic integration through human line 1. So you can have reverse transcription. What the weird thing about this is that you can have reverse transcription of this RNA, and you can have integration. So if you have reverse transcription and integrase, if you have reverse if you have the mechanism to do the reverse transcription of the RNA to DNA and to integrate, then you can have a problem. You can also have this integration of this plasmid that has DNA in it, and that can integrate in. So there's a multitude of ways this can happen. That's just with the inoculation. Now, with the actual virus, you can have actually viral genome integrate into your own genome. All right. So, but these are situations that are not prevalent, but can happen. All right. So I wouldn't say rare, but I wouldn't say everyone has this issue. I would say it's uncommon, but not rare. But it can happen, all right, with these different types of integration. But when it does, you can't get rid of it. So you have all these other problems because of the crisis that we went through. But we are going through this endemic phase, and we have a window, a 10-year window of good titer levels in most people within the population to be able to defend it, to be able to fight it. Problem comes in is what will happen when those titer levels start to wane and those memory cells aren't as robust for an aging population in 2030, 2031, 2032. If someone is 50 during COVID, let's say in 2020, then they're in their 60s at the tail end of this problem that I'm talking about. If you were 55, now you're 65. If you were in your 60s and you weathered the storm, you're now in your 70s. Your immune system will not be as robust. And so these cohorts that are around 45 or maybe 50, going into the tail end of this, going into 2030, 2031, 2032, that's a cohort group to pay attention to and how robust their immune system is. And we don't really know what the effects are going to be because you have a multitude of things happening. The natural driving down of titers, a weakening immune system because of just normal aging, and a weakening of the immune system because of the inoculation and the pathogen. All right. Now with that, please subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Also, you can follow me on X, GETTR. You can help support the work I do. These videos that I do are for free. I don't put stuff behind a paywall. If you'd like to help support the work, please donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel. Again, I don't put stuff behind a paywall. It's the donations on my website. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. Or you can also be a paid member to Patreon. All right, but again, I don't put stuff behind a paywall. All these videos that I do are for free because I think it's very important that I tell you how I see this situation. I think I have a very unique perspective on this that most people do not have. All right. Now, if you pay attention to me on some of the other videos, I can't do it in this video because of the censorship, but I tell you how to navigate it. All right. And if you just pay attention, you will increase your chances of improving your health and wellness. So take a look at the products that I have and listen to some of the other videos I do on how to stack these things. It's really important. It works. All right. You got to pay attention because it's all about making sure that your immune system is as robust as possible. If your immune system isn't robust as possible, you start having problems. Also, it's taking knowledge from anti-aging and longevity and sports medicine and geriatric medicine and putting it all together and targeting some of the key features that you need to have a robust, healthy body. All right. So with that said, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support the work that I do by purchasing the products and donating. You can donate on Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee, or be a member to Patreon. For the ones that have supported my work, I greatly appreciate it. Now we're going to play some videos, and I'll give you my perspective. All right, but just remember, in the context of waning titers, problems with genomic integration, with inoculation, or with the virus. All right. Different pathology changes because of the affinity to different tissues are changing. All right. So with that, now these videos, some of them will be 2 months ago and some of them will be very recent, like just either 2 days ago, maybe 5 days ago. I want to take a look at the mosaic here, but there are these 2 variants that you have to pay attention to. And that's the Stratus one, which is more on the west and the West Coast and the South, and Nimbus, which is they're using the term razor blade throat, all right?
Well, as you make plans for the July 4th holiday, health experts warn about a new COVID-19 variant spreading very.
So this is 2 months ago. Now I'm playing the old stuff because we know where we're at right now. All right. So you can pay attention to, like, what did you experience in your environment 2 months ago and where are you today? That's the reason why I'm playing this. This one was 2 months ago.
It could spark a summer wave of cases. So tonight we're sharing what you need to know about this variant, including the key symptom it's causing most often. It's related to the Omicron variant. NB181, nicknamed Nimbus, is spreading in the US, and it's now causing more than 40% of COVID-19 cases, according to the latest CDC data.
It is a little bit more infectious and contagious than kind of the last couple of versions that we have seen before. So we're seeing a pretty rapid rise in the number of cases related to Nimbus.
And the reason why is that the pathology changed. It's attaching to the epithelial of the oral pharynx.
Carrie Horn with National Jewish Health says as people gather to celebrate the July 4th holiday, there's an increased chance for the virus to spread even more. She says in addition to the symptoms with previous variants like fever, runny nose and congestion, some shortness of breath, cough, and body aches, the defining symptom for this variant is what she calls a razor blade sore throat.
It is really intense and it can last for a couple of days. And it's even as bad as like when you're just swallowing your saliva, just normal swallowing. It doesn't have to be with food or liquids or anything. Just super intense.
Keep in mind that when this is happening, you have a much higher level of inflammation. All right.
To slow the spread of this variant, Horn says to stay home if you're having symptoms. If you have to go out, wear a mask and continue washing your hands. If you're at high risk of getting severely sick, she recommends getting the updated COVID-19 vaccine.
The real benefit of the vaccine is keeping people out of the hospital, preventing severe illness and death. So anybody who's high risk, I strongly recommend getting the vaccine. Now, if you test positive for COVID-19 and are immunocompromised or have other high-risk factors, Dr. Horn says to see a healthcare provider right away for antiviral treatment. She also warns parents to.
Now, it is really important to pay attention that there are going to be more and more people that will have this autoimmune disorder, which I call age-like syndrome, right? But you also have autoimmune disorder, which is hyperactive. So you have like two different types of immune issues. You can have overactive immune system that's actually attacking the body. And you can have an underactive immune system that allows for diseases to take hold. Now, in both cases, it may be prudent to take antivirals to try to mitigate the problem, but the efficacy of these antivirals, it's maybe questionable. All right. Some people it helps, some people it doesn't. All right.
For sore throats in kids, it could be strep throat instead of COVID, which requires antibiotics.
In a world where you've constantly been told what you can't do, who will you choose to be when presented with something different? Ask your healthcare provider what could be.
All right. So that's the first video. Now, what's also interesting is that because kids get strep throat all the time, or a staph infection, um, or other types of infections that are like very common, you just don't know. So you'd have to test. So testing is going to be important to understand what do you have. Now, probably in most cases for kids, it's probably the more common, so strep throat, right? But um, but you have to pay attention that this endemic may move and become more prevalent in kids, may not. All right, but the thing is that there's this pulse that's taking place now. Another really important feature to take in consideration here is that your IgG4s are almost like a negative feedback loop for your immune system. So if you have an infection and your body is producing antibodies, it needs a mechanism to be able to say enough with the antibodies, and the body is producing a lot of pro-inflammatory cytokines, making antibodies, but it needs a mechanism to say shut down that, because you don't want too many antibodies, because too many antibodies is a problem. So there are mechanisms within the immune system to shut down the pro-inflammatory cytokines, upregulate the anti-inflammatory cytokines, and you also have antibodies that kind of help to the IgG4s help to suppress. Okay, but if you constantly get a pulse from, let's say, an inoculation, and you're constantly trying to get higher titer levels, you're actually telling the body produce more IgG4s, because you're pulsing the body that there is something there. There is an epitope, which is the S1, S2 subunit, the spike. And it's activating IgG4s. And then what happens is that the IgG4 levels are going up and becoming immunosuppressive. Chronic inflammation is also immunosuppressive. High cortisol levels that are chronic are immunosuppressive. See? So this is part of the many mechanisms of what I call AIDS-like syndrome. So that pulse by these boosters, or pulse by getting a new version of the inoculation, is going to be pulsing and eventually telling the body produce more IgG4s. Even though they're trying to bring up the titer level, the body's saying, I don't need the titer level, and I'm just going to produce IgG4s. And now what happens is your body is immunosuppressed. Now, if you take it from the standpoint of, let's say, it's not an inoculation pulse, but a pathogenic pulse, all right, natural infection pulse. So you're constantly getting it. Let's say there are people that have had COVID almost every year, all right, and you get that pulse. Well, you're also activating a mechanism to try to downregulate the immune system to prevent too many titers to be created. All right, so chronic pulsing of SARS-CoV-2, no matter if it's a new variant or not, but it's so close that the body is actually producing higher levels of IgG4. So the immunosuppression, if you're chronically getting it, is also happening, just like as if you were getting inoculations on a regular basis. It's the same problem, but a little bit different. Now, people would say, well, maybe the inoculations cause more harm. Maybe that might be possible. That might be true. Maybe not for some people. All right. But the thing is that you have this pulse that's causing immunosuppression, either through chronic infection or chronic inoculation. So you have that issue. Now you can have more chance of integration now. The more times you have this chronic pathogenic response, right, by the natural infection, right? This natural infection you're getting chronically, then what will happen is that you're increasing the chances of genomic integration, tumor, you know, inactivation of tumor suppression. So there are, in SARS-CoV-2, there are proteins that actually inhibit tumor suppressors. Well, if you inhibit a tumor suppressor, you are producing cancer. That's the whole nature of an inhibitor of a tumor suppressor. So you can have genomic integration that can cause cancer. You can have the proteins that are in the virus that can cause cancer because they inhibit tumor suppressors like P53, but it's not the only one. Now with the inoculation, you also are producing the S1, S2 subunit. Well, when you're producing the S1 and S2 subunit, that is a tumor suppressor inhibitor for P53. So that in alone can cause the potentiality of cancer. Now, there are different things have to be knocked out in a cell to actually move in the direction of cancer. So just shutting down P53 it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have cancer in a cell. There's other things that have to happen. But the point here is that increases the probability. Plus, you can have genomic integration through the plasmids, through human line 1 integration, right? So you have, no matter which way you pick, be naturally infected or inoculation, you can get harmed. And that was the whole danger of this very high level serial passage that Barrett did. All right, let's continue on.
If your pet goes from weird to weirder, drooly to.
The Food and Drug Administration has approved the next round of COVID shots for the fall, but only for a more limited group of people. The updated vaccine is approved for adults 65 and older. The FDA also gave the green light for kids and adults with at least one medical condition that puts them at risk of severe illness.
Now, I come from the perspective that if you want to take, you should have the option to take, but it should never be forced. All right. A patient should have full autonomy of what is going on in their body. All right. That's the perspective I had. I've always had that perspective. So if people are saying you have to take an inoculation, no. And if people say you must not have one, then I disagree with that too. You should have the choice. Now, with what is interesting about the dynamic that I mentioned, the more times that you have a booster or you have a new version of the inoculation, you're increasing the chances of affecting your immune system and increasing the chances of genomic integration and causing other pathologies like clotting issues and myocarditis and all this stuff, right? Maybe even early onset dementia. I'll do another video on just that. But the thing here is that you are increasing the chances. Now, if you look at it at a societal level, if you only have, the bulk of the society is not geriatric and it's not pediatric, right? The bulk of the society is an adult, age 20 to 55, right? That's the bulk of the society, all right? If the bulk of the society is not getting an inoculation in any massive way, again, it's up to an individual. But at the societal level, if the CDC is saying, okay, we prefer if it's just geriatric, immune compromised, young kids, right? You're talking about the tail end of the distribution of the population. So what that basically means is that you have less people getting the pulse in the society to suppress the immune system. So if you have more people getting the inoculation, you're increasing the chances of actually, paradoxically, increasing the chances of actually having a wave and more cases. The epi curve would actually be higher. All right. So the canonical thinking in medicine is well, just inoculate more people and the cases will go down. Well, what if the actual pulsing, this annual pulsing by boosters or new versions of the inoculation are administered in mass to the population, especially the bulk of the population? Well, your IgGs are going to go up. Your IgG4s, I mean, go up. Well, that's immunosuppressive because that's a negative feedback loop. Well, we're trying to bring up titer levels. Well, why would you need to bring up titer levels if you're still within the 10-year window? So if you're in a 10-year window already, you don't need an inoculation, either because you've already had an infection or because you've been inoculated. You don't need it. Oh, we got to bring up the titer levels. Well, you have a memory cell. So what happens is if you keep on pulsing with the inoculation annually, what will happen is that you're going to actually be weakening the immune system instead of just letting this 10-year window in the memory cells to take control of your immune system. Now, what's some of the reasons why they do this? One is that Big Pharma needs to sell vaccines. The other reason is that the scientific community, the medical community, keeps on thinking that it's higher titer levels at all times and not really understanding that you have memory cells. So even if you have titer levels that are coming down, you have memory cells to start to boost up those titer levels if there is a response to fight an infection. But to activate those plasma cells takes a little bit longer. So you may get a worse infection, but your body does kick in and starts to fight it. All right. So the scientific community can be looking at this from the standpoint that, well, we don't want that patient to have a more severe situation and just have their natural system fight it. Or they may look at it, if we have too many people in society that are falling in this category, that they have more severe infection because they have lower titers and it takes a little bit longer for their plasma cells to start pumping out antibodies, we would prefer to just boost up the titer level. But when you keep on doing that, your IgGs start to wane, the max. Each time you do this, the actual max level from the inoculation, it's waning, the max level. So you have this kind of slow, your actual titer levels are becoming non-responsive based on from the actual repeated inoculations. So this is a big problem here, and people don't realize this. Now, what do you do with the younger and the older generation that actually are immune compromised? or have, some people will be immune compromised. There's others that are, let's say, young, very young, that do not have an immune system, you know, that 6-month level. I personally think that a natural infection is better than having these inoculations. Now, for the elderly, you got another problem. They're having a waning immune system because they're old. And on top of that, they've been infected or been inoculated or both. And what do? Now, in those cases, it may be prudent. It's case by case. And it's really a case by case. You can't cookie cutter this one. You have to look at the patient and see it in terms of risk assessment. Is it better to try to get higher levels of titers for that patient, or just let them naturally try to fight it? If they are already compromised, let's say with their heart and with their pulmonary system because of COPD or some sort of pulmonary restriction, or they have congestive heart failure, right? These are situations where getting some sort of respiratory infection could be a death sentence. All right. So it really depends on the health of the patient and what you're trying to manage. Right? It's not cookie cutter. Oh, you're 65, go get it. Well, what if you're super healthy? Probably you don't need it. But if you have congestive heart failure, you probably do need it. All right. So it just really depends. Really depends. So it's not cookie cutter. It's not, so someone would say, well, all vaccines are bad, or this, or they'll say the messenger RNA is bad. It is. But the thing is that if you already have congestive heart failure and you catch something, it pushes you over the edge and you die. So you're more worried about dying from a cold or from a respiratory infection, or are you more worried about genomic integration and maybe cancer in 5 years? I mean, you got to pick what's the immediate concern. And this is where a lot of people don't understand nuance. They think that it's like all or nothing. They can't divide the situation and go, you know what? In some cases, people do need inoculations. But I'm against massive inoculations. It was crazy to do worldwide massive inoculations on the same epitope. Crazy. That's just screaming for selective pressure for some sort of escape. Okay, let's continue.
Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced the approval in a post on X today. The new restrictions are likely to affect what insurance covers, especially for people who do not qualify for the updated COVID shots. According to the CDC's vaccine price list, a COVID shot could cost up to $140 without insurance. Right now, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is in Texas. He is joining that state's Republican governor, who is signing 3 state bills related to President Trump's so-called Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA agenda. The first bill, I should say, orders warning labels on items with 44 common food additives. The second bill in Texas adds new limits on what food recipients of government food assistance can buy. And the third bans 7 food additives from free and reduced price school lunches there. NBC News medical reporter Berkeley Lovelace joins us now. So Berkeley, what does this mean for Texans and the food they buy? Could these bills have any impact beyond the Lone Star State as well?
Yeah, so these bills are really interesting because they focus on food additives rather than individual ingredients such as sodium or trans fat. So starting in 2027, people in Texas could start seeing warning labels on their food, such as Doritos and M&Ms, these really popular food items. Also, there could be some new requirements for public schools, so new nutrition education requirements or new physical activity requirements. And I think this is actually a roadmap of what Kennedy wants to do nationwide. So it's important to note that the jury is actually still out on whether or not food additives are indeed linked to health issues in people. So there was, the FDA did ban red dye number 3 in January over concerns about possible health risk, and that was included in this Texas bill. There are also a number of other additives in this bill where there are possible concerns about hyperactivity in children. But I would say a lot of these additives, there still is not yet a definitive link. And so it's unclear whether or not this will have a huge impact on chronic health disease in children, as Kennedy says. But it's also, I would say, a lot of food experts.
The tobacco industry dragged its feet for many decades, saying that it didn't cause cancer. All right, and it was found that it does. And this is the same issue. All you got to do is just use some common sense. You don't have to do a really comprehensive, expensive study to try to link a certain food additive to certain types of diseases, pediatric diseases. All right? All you got to do is, were people healthier in a different generation when these substances were not introduced into the population? And when these substances were introduced in the population, what's the correlation between health and those substances that were introduced? And if there is a positive correlation, and it's strong, with a high R value, there is adequate evidence there to get those products off the market. You don't need to do a more expensive study that has a lot of confounding, managing the other confounding variables. But the industry, the food industry, will drag their feet because they want this to happen. They want this because it's preservatives, it has better shelf life, it's cheaper to make, whatever. Unfortunately, I feel as that our scientific community and our medical community are not paying attention to the real problems with chronic disease in the United States. And they think that to solve the chronic disease, as it's popping up, you just give them a pill instead of getting to the root cause of the problem. A big part of it is lifestyle and environmental factors. And when you change your lifestyle and change your environmental factors, voila, guess what? People start to lose weight. Voila, their immune systems are better and they're healthier and they have more vitality. And this is a sad part of the scientific community, especially in medicine. Their paradigm is wrong. It's just wrong on how they look at how to solve the problem.
Really agree with Kennedy that the food supply needs to be cleaned up.
And we're seeing other states take similar measures, right? So are there other things that Kennedy wants to move forward nationally?
Yeah, so there are actually nearly half a dozen states who are pursuing bills just like these, and that includes West Virginia and California. Another item on Kennedy's list is ultra-processed foods, and so he recently took the step to define what an ultra-processed food is, and I'm told that can open the door to regulation, and ultra-processed foods have been linked to a number of health issues. Kate.
All right, Berkeley, love this for us. Thank you, Berkeley.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the
Only Brawny has 3 plies, and it's stronger than Falcon. Grip, stability, precision. That's the essence of driving. Lawfin.
Hey everybody, the newest COVID-19 variant on the rise now has a nickname of Nimbus. It comes from the NB.1.
Now, this video is 2 months ago. Again, I want to focus on very recent news and also about 2 months ago, because there's 2 things emerging in the United States. Stratus, and Nimbus.
.8.1 subvariant of Omicron. It is spreading rapidly, and it appears to stick to our cells and infect them really well, which means you may want to be on the lookout for a few nasty symptoms. The main one reported right here, a hoarse voice and a wicked sore throat, said to feel kind of like a razor blade sensation, according to symptom trackers. Infectious disease specialist Dr. Stephen
Now
Black.
think about it. If it's up closer to the mouth and you're coughing, then it spreads easier. So not only do you have a different pathology, different attachment profile compared to the early days of COVID, but now it's closer, because you remember it was about the attachment in your lung tissue, all right, your type 2 cells, the ACE2 receptors. But now it's a little bit closer. Now, what is happening with also influenza? Influenza, bird flu, is lower into the lung system. It's harder for human-to-human transmission. If a farmer gets bird flu, right, it's deeper into the lungs. So it's harder to do human-to-human. But we have receptors also in the upper area of the lung and in the throat area. And when there's mutations that take place, certain types of mutations that take place, that bird flu can actually become human-to-human transmission. And it's the whole idea is it's in the respiratory system, it's up higher. So this is the pathology is changing.
Ohio's TriHealth told me lots of us don't associate a sore throat with this virus. So since this might be your first noticeable symptom, remember this.
So sore throat, bloating, stomach pain. All right. Now, some of these were in some patients, but it wasn't, it was a lot that had bloating problems. So wait a minute, stomach, bloating problems, that's upper and lower GI? Well, wait a minute, you got a lot of different cells and cell types and receptors that are in your GI system. And so this goes back to what I was saying. It was about CD209 and CD299 and CD147. I'm telling you, this is the beginnings of something much worse. As this is emerging and doing the pinball effect and going to different receptors, and there's going to be an emergence of a different type of pathology, and people that are managing these patients, they're going to look at this and they're going to go, oh, you got some sort of problem, but you also have COVID. All right. So we think you may have, I don't know, let's just say you have some sort of ulcer, right? But really, it's not an ulcer in the common sense, in the normal sense, but it's really a symptom of a different pathology of actually SARS-CoV-2. And this is where the doctors are going to get it wrong. They're going to look at these patients and they're going to see, oh, you happen to have a digestive problem. All right. Maybe ulcer colitis or, some sort of other digestive problem. Right? And COVID. Not realizing that COVID actually is causing the digestive problem.
For those people who are at risk, the virus hasn't gone away and they still have to respect it.
This Nimbus subvariant also seems to be causing a second unusual COVID-related symptom, GI troubles. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, all common. But with this one, bloating, constipation, heartburn, and stomach pain are also being reported.
Now think about this. As the pathology is changing, as it's attaching to different receptors and different tissues, if you notice, if it's the razor throat, it's up higher up in the throat and it's going to pass easier. You're going to be able to transmit it easier. Vomiting, diarrhea, these are all natural mechanisms through mutation and selection pressure for viruses to actually spread. These are fluid changes, fluid transmissions. Like for example, nausea. Okay, you're feeling nauseous, right? You vomit, and if you get vomiting is a process. One process is to try to clear something that's disrupting your digestive system. So it's a natural process to try to get rid of it, but it's also a means for viruses to spread. Diarrhea, same problem, just from the other side of the digestive tract. Instead of vomiting, it's diarrhea. Well, this is a very high level where you can spread disease. So this is what I mean by the pathology is changing, and this emergence that's taking place with the endemic aspect of the gain of function. This gain of function is not normal. It has multiple receptors. And so as it's mutating, it's going to change the way the body reacts to it. And it's finding ways to become more transmissible. The bloating and constipation, it's attaching to other tissues in your digestive tract. The heartburn, okay, that's probably because of the digestive juices coming up from coming up through the esophagus. The stomach pain, again, probably attaching to other receptors. All right. But the thing here is it's changing, which was I predicted this in 2020. And I called it the pinball effect that will lead to different pathologies. So when you go and you say, I have a stomach pain and I feel bloated, the doctor isn't going to think, well, wait a minute here. Do they have COVID or maybe they have an ulcer? So they do breath tests to see if you have H. pylori. And, or you have, some other tests, but they're not realizing it's SARS-CoV-2 that is the cause.
The usual COVID-19 symptoms, such as coughing, sneezing, and respiratory problems, also still present. These, Dr. Blatt says, are the ones bringing people into the intensive care unit, especially if they have pre-existing health problems.
Sometimes just really older patients, because they lose their immunity with time. As you get older, you just don't build antibodies as well as you used to.
And speaking of immunity, if you have had the most current COVID-19 vaccine or you've previously been infected with the virus, you likely do have some immunity to Nimbus. While it's more contagious than some other subvariants, it is not causing, in most cases, more severe disease. Now, if you're healthy, you may just need to take a few days to heal. But if not, testing for this.
The reason why I'm replaying that is that it's not about the death, the immediate death. It's about the long-term effects. And that sometimes it's the long-term effects and chronic issues that are worse than the actual immediate death rate. All right, so it's not as bad now because lots of people have antibodies. See, if these viruses were introduced in a human population that had no antibodies, you would have major deaths right away. All right, but because we have many different antibodies within the population, it's suppressed and it's endemic and it's survivable. but it's also causing long-term effects like turbo cancers, early onset dementia, immune issues, cardiovascular problems, even polyps are starting to become more prevalent, even for younger people. All right, but it's not just the virus; it's also the inoculations, because of the genomic integration and because the S1, S2 subunit is a tumor suppressor inhibitor. So people need to pay attention here. There's a situation where there's no good solution. Well, what do? Well, do you get the virus? Well, it could hurt you long term. Depends on your constitution. Do you get the inoculation? It could hurt you. There's no good solution here. There's only bad solutions. What, do you hide under the bed? That's not a good solution. You just hide from society? You just be a germaphobe? That's not a good solution. What's the good solution? The best solution, but it's not good, is to let your body weather the storm, or what I call D-Day, just push through. Some people are going to make it and some people are not. Because I think that the risk of taking the inoculations is more problematic. There's more chance of a problem. But it doesn't mean that you're all clear if you don't get an inoculation. And this is where people don't get it. There's no good solution here. There's no antidote. There's no this weapon was released with a very poor bioshield. There's nothing there to help people. Oh, just take ivermectin, everything's going to be fine. Really? Really? You think that? You really think that? Okay, just keep on thinking that way. Because I'm not wrong. Just keep on thinking that way. Just wait. Because, all right, let's say ivermectin does help for some patients. It has mixed results. But let's say hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin work. All right? What do you do when it starts to mutate and actually attaches more to, let's say, CD209? What do you do then? Still think ivermectin is going to help you? What about if it has higher affinity to CD147 and causes higher incidences of blood disorders? Think ivermectin is going to help you then? See the point? Even if people did it in mass, it's going to create selection pressure for these higher affinity receptors. People are stupid. People are stupid.
Most people don't know this, but personal injury attorneys aren't allowed to say they're better than their competitors. These rules protect you from being misled. Lawyers can only make verifiable.
As new COVID cases are rising across the country, hospitals are starting to feel the impact. But new guidance over who can get the COVID vaccine is causing confusion.
It should not be this hard. I should not have to go this much time and effort simply to get a vaccine to keep me from getting ill.
Last week, the FDA narrowed approvals for the COVID vaccine to adults.
Keep in mind, when less people at the center of the bell-shaped curve, less people get boosters, less people get these retooled inoculations, less people will have immune suppressed issues. Because remember, most people have antibodies now. Most people have memory cells. So if you keep inoculating, it's a pulse that actually is causing immunosuppression because it's increasing your IgG4s. So, and not just that, just forget about the IgG4s. If you keep on pulsing the body, you become non-responsive. Your titers don't go up to max levels. Your IgG4, your IgGs do not go up to a previous max level. And you start slowly become non-responsive. So by taking it away from the bulk of the community, by not recommending it for the bulk of the community, it's actually better for the society. But again, I take the stance that if someone wants to take it, it should be their right. If they don't want to take it, they should not be forced to.
Or younger people who have an underlying health condition. A big change under the leadership of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Health and Human Services Secretary under the Trump administration.
The FDA's decision does not affect the availability of COVID vaccines for Americans who want them.
CVS says its locations will require a COVID vaccine prescription in 13 states plus DC. They won't administer any COVID vaccines for now in 3 states, but will offer them in the rest of the country for those who qualify.
Now, this is important. This is important. This is why I keep on saying, okay, it's important to understand where we were from, where we came from in 2020, where we're at with the immune system right now, and what's starting to emerge in terms of the pathogen and how it there's a manifestation in terms of the symptoms. So with Stratus, that's West Coast and the South. With Nimbus, that's the rest of the country. Now, okay. Now, Nimbus is the razor throat, all right, symptoms. So they're both Omicron, but they have pathologies that are slightly different, okay? Now, you have California, Texas, right? Arizona. All right, let's just do COVID vaccines available. California, Texas, Oregon, Washington, West and South. So that's where Stratus is. Okay, now only with the prescription. Arizona, Utah, no COVID vaccines offered. Nevada, New Mexico. All right, so the point I'm making here is that you have to pay attention to where the inoculations are available and where are they not available, and how the spike might happen and it's positively correlated because of this weakening of the immune system, of pulsing and getting those IgG4s up that leads to immunosuppression. All right, so now, okay, so you have only with a prescription, and you have a lot of the East Coast, right? Now, what's interesting is COVID vaccines available. You also have that in Connecticut, New Jersey, Maryland. New York is only with a prescription. All right, so different areas of the country are going to have probably spikes based on the availability of the vaccine. And I think that you're going to notice here is that it's going to be paradoxical. More people that end up more of a population that ends up getting the vaccine, actually might actually see a spike in cases. But I think what's happening there is that it's the immune system that is being downregulated, right? Now people would say, well, maybe it's the vaccine that's giving them the disease. Well, it's in sort of a way it is, because it's weakening the immune system. But when they say that, they're not talking about immune system dysregulation, right? They're thinking, well, that's the actual symptoms is because of the inoculation. Well, that's not true, because when you test, there are multiple ways to test. You got the PCR. Oh, the PCR is bad. Well, what about the antibodies? The antibody test. And when you see the antibody test and you're infected, you not only have an antibody to the spike protein, you also have antibodies to the M protein and other proteins within the virus. So you have a profile of antibodies. That's how you can determine natural infection or only inoculation, by looking at the antibody profile. Because the antibody profile is only going to be to the S1 subunit if it was inoculation only. So you'll have IgMs and IgGs to the S1 and S2 subunit only. But when you are naturally infected, what happens with these patients is the PCR shows positive, and you have a multitude of different antibodies that are in the bloodstream, right? Now, it takes about 14 days to actually see those antibodies. That's the reason why they do an antigen test for different components of the virus. So you can see antigens of the spike and antigens of the envelope, the virus membrane. So the M protein, the E protein, and the S protein, you will see the antigens in the blood serum. You don't see that in a vaccine. So you can't get it from the vaccine. So this is the nuance. That it's like you have a PCR that's detecting the genome. You have antibody tests. So if you've had it long enough, that's how you can tell if the person was infected, recently or a little while ago, because of this 14-day window it takes. So you have the PCR showing positive. Let's say the person just was infected and never was infected with SARS-CoV-2 before. So they have no antibodies for the M protein, E protein, or S protein, but they have antigens floating around that are of the E, M, and S proteins. Well, right there is proof positive it's the virus. Some people don't understand what they're talking about when they say, well, if someone gets an inoculation, that's what the COVID is. No, it's not. Because the test shows otherwise. So, okay, so what does this mean? All right. My hypothesis is this: places that will have more administration of the inoculation will have a higher probability of more cases, because it's affecting the immune system. So when they have the symptoms, they test, they see the antigens, they see the PCR, it's all positive, boom. So they are affecting the health. And it's this mentality that they think that just keep on trying to boost up the titer levels, keep on boosting up the titer levels. But over time, people are actually becoming non-responsive. Plus, they're getting the pulse to increase the concentrations of the IgG4s. And that is a negative feedback loop to suppress the immune system.
Brains not offering specific details says it's, quote, prepared to offer the vaccine in states where we are able to do so. The COVID vaccine shakeup amid turmoil at the CDC. The agency's director abruptly fired last Thursday by Kennedy, a vocal vaccine skeptic, with 4 senior officials resigning in protest, citing ideological interference.
That's the end of what I can do as a physician who said that first I would do no harm.
The American Academy of Pediatrics calling the new...
Wait a minute. In the Hippocratic Oath, it also talks about patients having autonomy. It also talks about the idea of if you're supposed to be data dependent, right? So do no harm. Well, that's just a bumper sticker. Do no harm for who? Do no harm. Well, why administer Why administer inoculations that weren't thoroughly tested? I mean, just using common sense, that was potentially doing harm. Actually did harm. So most of these doctors that were administering these things, guess what? They didn't follow their Hippocratic oath. Oh, interesting. Most people that actually had an inoculation, they didn't get it from a doctor. They got it from a pharmacist. Notice that?
Vaccine limitations, quote, deeply troubling, insisting broader vaccination is needed for kids even without a secondary condition.
53% of those children hospitalized last season had no underlying conditions.
The mixed messaging untimely as the school year and the battle over these vaccines is just beginning. Marissa Para, NBC News.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top.
There's no good solution to this. It's only bad solutions. Only bad solutions. No good solution. All right, let's see here.
The network. It is more than just infrastructure. It is the heart of the connected enterprise, collecting and circulating data.
Oh,
CNN. Completed new questions today about how your health could be impacted by the actions of Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. We just learned that in the weeks before Kennedy moved.
Yeah, his decisions may actually make you healthier.
To oust Dr. Susan Menares as head of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, top HHS officials repeatedly pressed her to commit to signing off on potential new vaccine restrictions. That's according to two people familiar with the matter. Also today, it became more difficult for people in 16 states in these United States to get a COVID vaccination.
So Nimbus is starting to ramp down and Stratus is starting to go up. Now, where is Nimbus? That's East Coast. All right. A lot of the cases are East Coast. So all right. So what do we have here? You have people that need a prescription to get the COVID vaccine. So less people are going to be getting it. All right. Most likely also they're going to have problems with having it paid by the insurance. So they might have to pay some amount. I'm not sure if the insurance actually covers all of it. All right, so you have on the East Coast less availability. And Nimbus, razor throat, right, is starting to ramp down as Stratus is starting to come up. So it's possible that there will be two variants that are dominant in the United States in the fall and the winter season, Nimbus and Stratus. But it's also possible that Stratus supersedes Nimbus and becomes the dominant one, right? So we could have potentially two ones based on region, and that's where we're at right now, or Stratus supersedes Nimbus. Now, what's interesting here is that the East Coast, you have less availability. That's where Nimbus is. Nimbus is going to start coming down because you have less people that are having this titer issue and this concentration of IgG4s. Now, no COVID vaccines offered in Nevada and New Mexico. Well, it'll be interesting to see how the cases in the winter and early part of next year in 2026, how the cases arise in these two states. Because it's sandwiched in between ones that need a prescription and ones that don't need a prescription or that are available. So they're kind of like in this, they're centered, they're sandwiched into this situation. On one side, you have people that are going to be getting lots of vaccines. On another side, it's controlled and you need a prescription. And their state, Nevada and New Mexico, not available.
CVS Pharmacy is not offering COVID vaccines in these states we're showing you in this chart, even if you meet eligibility requirements. In all of those states, except for Massachusetts, Nevada, and New Mexico, you can get the vaccine if you have a doctor's prescription. Why this confusing change? CVS cites the current regulatory environment.
Remember, most people have antibodies. Inoculation, infection, or both. Why do you have to keep on getting a vaccine? You have titers already. Why do you have to keep on pulsing? And this is why I keep on saying that if you want to keep that epi curve down, you want to boost up your immune system and stop this crazy train with the boosters.
Saying that the chain follows state-level regulations, and in some states, pharmacists cannot provide vaccines until they are recommended by the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Panel. Well, that panel won't meet to make new recommendations until September 18th, and that meeting will take place without multiple high-level CDC officials who just resigned in protest of RFK Jr.'s actions. One of them, Dr. Dimitri Daskalakis, led the Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, and he told CNN, RFK Jr. has never received a briefing on measles or COVID-19 or flu from the experts at the CDC.
No one from my center has ever briefed him on any of those topics. Yeah, he's getting information from somewhere, but that information is not coming from CDC experts who really are the world's experts in this area. He's not picking us up.
They were such experts that they don't have a placebo test. They were such experts that they don't know the ramifications of mixing different vaccinations on a schedule and how it may affect the immune system. They're such experts that they're not honest of the gain of function that took place with the virus. They're not honest that, wait a minute, you got other doctors that are out there that are doing procedures and they're starting to see some really weird shit. Like opening up some blood vessels for, let's say, some sort of graft for the heart. And they start seeing really weird clotting stuff happening in the vascular system. Or seeing lots of myocarditis. Or problems with the immune system. Or having a colonoscopy and seeing lots of people having more polyps at ages that they shouldn't be having. Well, wait a minute here, what's going on? What's going on? Such experts. You know, what we need are people that are like, okay, it's not about pro-vaccine or anti-vax. It's not about that. What it is that, is it safe and effective? You can have something effective and not safe. You can have something that is safe and not effective. And you can have something that's safe and effective. And you can have something that is not safe and not effective. And let's really take a look at how safe is this? Short term and long term. And I think that when you look at the data, you will come to the conclusion that it is not safe in the long run. But this is from the mentality that vaccines are, you know, that's the way you fight disease. More vaccines, more vaccines, more vaccines, more vaccines, more vaccines. No, 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 no. Why is it that Gen Xers are healthier than Gen Y millennials? Why? It's not just vaccines, it's the environment, it's all of these factors together. It's a multifactorial problem that is causing disease to be more prevalent. And if you just move back to a simpler time where less is more, meaning less intervention and more common sense, have less pulsing by a toxic environment, your body is going to heal. Your body will be more robust. Like, for example, when I had to do my research in for the HIV research, all right, and doing the experiments with the animals, because it was in a live setting and we were dealing with different types of animals, I had to get another shot of for the polio. I had another polio vaccine. I had to have it to be able to be in the laboratory, because you may contract diseases by dealing with these animals. All right. Now I'll tell you, and I'm a healthy guy, but I remember when I had that polio shot. All right. Now, of course, I had a polio shot when I was a kid, and I don't remember it. But as an adult, that was painful. And I'm not talking about painful in terms of where they administered it in my deltoid. I'm talking about it was painful, and I felt like a weakness of my neurons, a weakness of my legs, a weakness of moving. And it lasted for a good 2 weeks. And I'll tell you, there is something fundamentally wrong with overuse of these vaccines. Now, some people are in a very high risk category that they have to have it. If you're working with animals and you're doing experiments, right, and they have diseases, you need to prevent you from contracting these types of diseases, right? So there is a prudent safety protocol for researchers, right? But you're taking risks. You don't know if you're going to have an adverse reaction. You could have an adverse reaction. Sometimes it's benign and only lasts for a few weeks. Sometimes it's major, or sometimes it doesn't happen at all. But that's not the bulk of the population. The bulk of the population doesn't do research in HIV, right? The bulk of the population isn't in high risk situations, right? So why do we assume that we have to over vaccinate the population with all these different potential diseases that could arise? We don't. Why? Because all we have to do is just take a look at previous generations and how healthy they were, and they didn't have these vaccines. But the counter argument by the scientific community is because of urban sprawl, because of suburban sprawl, because of moving into natural reservoir domains, because of human population growing, that it's unleashing pathogens that we're not used to being exposed to. Now, in some cases, that's true. But does that mean that we have to go from 6 vaccines back in the Gen X years to 30 or 60 today for pediatrics? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I think that there's a high correlation between bad food, poor quality water and air. The processed foods are a major problem, and the over inoculations, they all are working together to cause this autism. And the reason why you can't pinpoint it on any particular thing is because there's a synergistic effect that's taking place with all of it.
On several offers to brief
So RFK Jr., the HHA secretary, who, as you may remember, has 0 medical degrees and 0 science degrees, has also never been briefed on the COVID-19 by the CDC, despite long condemning COVID vaccines with all sorts of false accusations, making a number of false claims about their safety.
Last time I looked, I thought Tapper didn't have a science degree either, but he's telling you on how to stay healthy by just inoculating to the moon. I mean, I don't even like covering this subject anymore, really, because it's just so, it's so polarized with, there's a lot of anti-vaxxers that are extreme, and there's a lot of pro-vaxxers that are extreme. And there's this middle ground that's really important for people to reach, to realize in some cases it's important. In many cases, it's being abused and overused. On top of the crazy thing that happened in 2020 with a weapons program. Now, let's just pretend that SARS-CoV-2 never happened. It's hard to pretend that because people have died, but let's just say it didn't happen. There's just overuse of the vaccines. Now, I understand why. Money's to be made. The CDC and FDA are captured. It's a revolving door for corporate America, for boards, for board positions at these big pharma companies. And there's also a incentive for doctors because there's a quota that they have to meet for insurance reimbursement. And sometimes they have bonus, levels where if you met your quota, there's a bonus, but it's tied to the insurance, all right? So you have that issue, that there is a monetary gain by the physicians to do it. And then there's another group of physicians that just believe the dogma. They really believe it. They believe the dogma. They believe that more is better. That every single disease out there, you should have some sort of antibody for it. And that there's not going to have any adverse side effects to the body and its overall health. They really believe this kind of dogma. So, and then you have a smaller group of people that's saying, well, wait a minute here. There's a problem. Let's find out why the problem is happening. And maybe when we discover what is really going on, that will give us insight in how the body works. But instead, what happens is people just shove it under the rug and say, oh, it's not happening. Bad thing, negative externalities with over inoculations, not happening. Yet incidences of problems are increasing. So I'm tired of people like Tapper telling the public that doesn't have really a strong scientific background, oh, it's safe. Oh, don't worry. RFK must be a crackpot. RFK Jr. must be wrong. Must be wrong. Really? And he calls himself a journalist? Well, why don't you dive into, like, what is the problem? Why is there autism that's skyrocketing in the United States? And a big part of it is the vaccine program. Why is it that there are really strange pathologies that are starting to arise in a post-COVID era? The answer is partially the virus and partially the vaccine. That's the answer. You can spend years diving into the details and the mechanisms. But you have a person like Tapper that's telling the community, oh, everything's safe, and that RFK Jr., no, just don't pay attention to him. Actually, having him in the head of HHS is actually a breath of fresh air. Why? Because now you have someone that is not part of the dogma and is actually saying, prove to me that it's safe and effective. Prove to me that we really need these more comprehensive accelerated schedules for the pediatric patient. And the medical community can't prove it. The medical community can't prove that it's better to continue on with this over inoculation of the population. So it's really about dogma and where they're at. And what really needs to happen is a change of zeitgeist. The zeitgeist needs to change to the point where it's what is best for the society. Now this goes into many different realms, especially when you're talking about biowarfare. I don't have time to do it in this video, but when you're talking about biowarfare and foreign policy, there are some things that are very disturbing, to say the least. But the thing here is that over-inoculation of the population, independent of COVID, is not a prudent thing to do. But you got Tapper that thinks otherwise, that he knows better. He went to Dartmouth for journalism, so he knows better. He's going to tell you that you need a COVID vaccine because he's from Dartmouth.
He's now impacting the availability of you to get COVID vaccines wherever you are across the country. Joining us now, former Health and Human Service Secretary Javier Becerra under President Biden. He's also a Democratic candidate for governor in California. Mr. Secretary, what do you make of this current disruption to vaccine availability at CVS and Walgreens? How big of an impact will this have on people, especially those most vulnerable to bad cases of COVID-19?
First, Jake, it's hard to understand what's going on, why you would go in reverse when it comes to disease prevention and control, why you would get rid of the health experts who've guided us over the years and certainly through COVID. It makes no sense. You're either firing the health experts or you're hemorrhaging the rest. And that makes it impossible for you to be prepared for any future attack that might come from whatever disease it might be.
After this week's high-level resignations at the CDC, Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who worked as a physician before he entered politics, he said the September meeting of this CDC vaccine advisory panel should be postponed until these vacancies are filled. And he said if it's not postponed, he called on the panel to reject any recommendations. Do you agree?
This should be driven by the science, not the politics. Politicians do very poorly when it comes to science. And if you don't have the scientists in place to guide the politicians who are heading these departments, how can you come out with something that's going to be good for the health of the American people? And so I think it's time for the Senate to ask the right questions. And I understand that Secretary Kennedy will go before them. It's time for him to lay out the answers to why all this is happening at a time when America cannot be unprepared.
You say you work alongside the CDC leaders who just resigned. Some of them work on infectious diseases. What kind of practical impact could their departures have on the public health of the American people?
Well, how do you prepare? How do you use the data and know where it's taking you if the experts who are the ones who've always examined it to then give you recommendations are gone?
The problem is that you have experts that are captured by the big pharma. That's one issue. And they want that golden parachute and revolving door so they can get on the board of these companies. That's that issue. And the thing is that there is a dogma within medicine that is pushing this idea that that all diseases need to be inoculated. that you need, there should be some sort of vaccine for all these different diseases. And so there needs to be a paradigm shift in the way to actually look at this from a safe and effective point of view. And even if it's safe and effective, is it needed? Because you can have something that's safe and effective, but maybe it's not really a societal problem. And therefore, don't administer something just because you think that it's going to be better for society. If there isn't a problem, why fix it, right? But Big Pharma needs to find all these problems out there and try to have a solution through an inoculation, because that's the cheapest way, all right? And to have them constantly come back for more and more and more and more. And if you keep on pulsing the body with all these vaccines, even if it's the same, let's say it's not the same epitope, it's just different vaccines for different diseases, you're creating an inflammatory response and having more pro-inflammatory cytokines that revs up this IgG4 and that will eventually downregulate the plasma cells. So the way, if people are overdoing it, it actually can cause the body to be worse off later in life. And where's the studies for, okay, you have a very high level of number of inoculations in a certain age group during the pediatric years. And where's that long-term study where 30 years later, what's the effects? Compared to a group that had less inoculations in their pediatrics, and compare problems that they may have 30 years later. And see if there is a statistical difference that's significant. And I suspect that you do. You'll find that there is. Well, where's the experts doing this? Where's the experts saying this? So it's not just immediate issue, it's also the long-term effects 2-3 decades down the road. So we're playing with fire because we don't fully understand how the immune system works, because it's almost chaotic system because there's so many feedback loops. There's no way a doctor knows for sure what they're really affecting with the body, with the immune system. And the doctor feels as though, oh, it is plausible deniability. I read from the CDC, they say that I need to do this, I'll do it. Oh, they come up with a bulletin saying stop doing it, they stop doing it. They read some research paper, and the research paper is saying this is the best thing to do for treatment of blah, blah, blah. They do it. And then 5 years later, another research paper says to do the opposite. And then they change. So it's evolving, but there's plausible deniability from the physician because he's just following what the CDC is telling him.
You continue the collaboration with the 50 state health authorities who really do healthcare in their states. CDC coordinates that. How do you do the coordination for all those states so that you make sure that in California or Texas or New York or Illinois, what we know in one place, the other places will know, so we can coordinate the best actions that we need to take to protect all Americans? And that's what CDC does. It is the glue that helps every state do this the right way. You can't do it the right way if you're not.
Why isn't the CDC telling you that the gain-of-function research came from Barrett's lab in Wuhan? And it has multiple affinities to different receptors that have different pathologies, and that long COVID is a major problem. CDC. Because unfortunately, CDC is one of the spokes of biowarfare. Because they need to be able to be the conduit to administer the bioshield.
coordinating. You can't do it the right way if you're not using the data, and you can't do it the right way if you don't have the health experts working for you anymore.
What do you think the good scientists at the CDC should do right now? The ones that are still there, should they stay and fight?
I would like Jake Tapper to tell me what a good scientist is. What's a good scientist? If you look that up, what's a good scientist? What does that mean? Good scientist. A scientist that's pushing an agenda, either on one side of the spectrum or the other? Is a good scientist an anti-vaxxer? Or is a good scientist a pro-vaxxer? Or is it a good scientist is someone that is looking at the data and comes to conclusions that are unbiased? What's a good scientist? A good scientist, is that a person that gets published in a biased journal? Try to publish something that goes against the grain of the dogma. You can't get published. So if you can't get published, does that mean that you're not a good scientist? What if you have evidence to show that there is problems with vaccines? All right? And you try to publish that in Nature. Do you think Nature's going to publish it? So because you didn't get published, does that mean that you're a bad scientist or a good scientist? Take it the other way around. Maybe someone did research that proves that more vaccines are better, and it gets published in Nature. Is that a good scientist or a bad scientist? What is a good scientist? It's such a... Journalism at their best.
Resign in protest. What's your message to them?
Jake, I think they're doing everything they can. Don't think that some of these folks who just resigned this week haven't been thinking about what they should and could do. It just got to the point where I think they just said enough is enough. As you just heard in your report, they're not even being consulted by the chief of the department or the Trump administration on what best to do when it comes to these infectious diseases. And so I think many of them are holding on. I appreciate all they've done. I know all of the ones who just resigned. They were so impactful when it came to pulling America out of this COVID crisis. In fact, Dr. Daskalakis, who you just saw, he was the person who helped, he was the guy that helped navigate the...
Did they pull America out of the crisis? Or did they kick the can down the road to have other pathologies start to arise, like terminal cancer, like early onset of dementia, like heart disease, like colon cancer, effects of the sympathetic nervous system, especially with long COVID patients? Did the CDC really pull us out the crisis? Or are we still in the crisis? Did the war ever end? And like I said, it's about the aftershock. The aftershock is going to cause more harm than the actual early stage, the early stages of SARS-CoV-2. People were only focused on the deaths, not the aftershock. And the aftershock will kill more people, but it'll be a soft kill. It'll be much quieter. It's plausible deniability as more people succumb to different types of diseases. Did the CDC do the right job? Did they? Really? Why doesn't the CDC hold Pfizer accountable? No, the CDC didn't pull us out of COVID. We're still in it, but it's different. It's about the aftershock and its different manifestations. It's too simple to think. Oh, we just got rid of the virus, and we got, people have antibodies, that everything's going to be copacetic now. But what about how those antibodies are affecting people? How about the administration of the inoculations affecting the immune system? What about the inoculations and the pathogen causing different types of diseases. It's not just a respiratory issue. SARS-CoV-2 is a multitude of diseases. It's a blood disease. It's not just a respiratory disease. And the CDC must have done the right thing. Must have done it. Yeah. Yeah. They're all lily white.
Infections that we saw, and we were able to stop it from becoming a pandemic. How do you do this work if the people who saved you before are now gone? It's ridiculous.
One of the arguments RFK Jr. makes, Secretary Kennedy makes, is that so many of the scientists and health officials were wrong during COVID because they closed down schools for too long, they shut down businesses for too long. In retrospect, there are a lot of Americans who hear that and say, that's true. What do you say?
Jake, it's not true. CDC did not close any school. CDC doesn't have the authority. Only school officials have that authority. CDC provided information and guidance. We provided recommendations. We never ordered any school closed.
This is divide and conquer strategy. You have the FDA, you have the CDC, you have the HHS. Who has the power? HHS. HHS has the power to actually detain you if you're sick and take away your civil liberties. That's the power of HHS. So it's not CDC. So it was a diversion tactic by either Jake is stupid or it was to divert and say, oh, the CDC isn't at fault. And so nothing, everything's okay. No,
Siri knows many things.
the problem is HHS during the crisis and how they were tyrannical. And they were probably getting their recommendations from Fauci, who was part of NIH.
Provided the information that helps you decide how to do your business at home. Remember, I just told you, 50 states control their healthcare, 50 states control their schools. CDC doesn't control healthcare or schools in any state. We provide the data and the science to back up what you do. And so for the CDC to be blamed for what
HHS has authoritarian means to push an agenda.
Others did is not just wrong, it's wrong-headed because CDC provided the right information that helped us survive the pandemic, to pull out of it, not just with our health, but with our economy. And to now say CDC is to blame, the professionals, wow.
Former HHS Secretary Javier Becerra, thanks so much for your time, sir. Appreciate it.
Scroll less, learn more. Find your school district's plan at ny.gov/phone free.
Optimize RX. All right, so that is a overview of where the United States is at right now in terms of the new Omicron variants, Stratus and Nimbus, and how certain states are actually curtailing the availability of the vaccines. Now, curtailing the availability of the vaccines, I think in the general, in the final analysis for most of the population is actually a good thing because it's reducing the chances of having that pulse that affects the immune system. And there seems to be a correlation between a overuse of boosters, inoculations, and about a 2-month pulse later, where there's a surge of cases. All right, so there is a latency and a surge. So if you don't have as many people getting inoculated, you gotta remember, most people already have antibodies, right? Most people already had some sort of protection in their body now. They have memory cells. So by reducing the number of people that are actually getting the inoculations in late 2025 and early 2026, the number of cases should go down. Now that sounds paradoxical based on the normal dogma of medicine. But the thing that people are not paying attention to is that this overpulsing and how it affects the IgG4s, right? And it's this AIDS-like syndrome that I keep on talking about. It's affecting the immune system. So just let your body heal, and it will heal. Now, to prevent this downregulation of the immune system, you have to make sure your cortisol levels are going down. You have to make sure that your inflammation is going down. And there are ways to do this. Because what spikes the IgG4s? A pro-inflammatory response. Well, if you don't have a pro-inflammatory response, you're slowly having the body go back to a normal state. And you're allowing your immune system to heal, and your immune system will be more robust, and you have the memory cells. So if you do contract SARS-CoV-2 of whatever variant, you'll be able to fight it better. So it's important to let your body heal and stay away from these inoculations in most cases. In some people, it may be important to do because they don't have an immune system. And if they don't have an, if they have a really poor immune system, they may need to be on monoclonals and antivirals in those cases. Or if they have a weak system that doesn't have a robust memory cell activation, they may need some help. All right? But we're not talking about a big part of the population here. We're talking about a small part of the population. So I think it should be used in a very judicious way, not in a mass way. Right? Answers to doing things in a pandemic and the answer to doing things in an endemic situation could be different. Could be different to manage through cases. So having the cookie cutter approach for everything is just wrong. And I think the CDC it falls into this category that all diseases need to have a vaccine for it mentality, with not adequate testing, not just in the short term, but also in the long term, and the synergistic effects of having all these things pumped into the body. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. They're affecting the immune system of the patient. But they know better. They know better. And there's no accountability. They can do harm and there's just no accountability. Because they would just say, well, that was what the science was at the time. That was what the zeitgeist was. That was what the paradigms were. Oh, it changed. Sorry. There's no accountability. All right. Please help support the work that I do by making sure that you subscribe to all the channels I have. I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Follow me on X or on GETTR. And please help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free. You can donate on Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel. I have great products on my store. Take a look at them and pay attention to how I stack them. And I will help you weather through this. All right, I've been telling people what to do for over 5 years. I'm right. You just have to pay attention to me. All right? There's ways to mitigate. So please help support the work that I do by donating and taking a look at what I offer on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.